Hello, and welcome back to Amplified History, a podcast about the long, strange, occasionally furniture-damaging story of rock and roll. I'm Robert, and today we're stepping into the moment when the music stopped being a collection of promising sparks and became a cultural explosion. In the first episode, we followed some of the roads that brought us here: blues, gospel, country music, rhythm and blues, boogie-woogie, electric instruments, independent labels, jukeboxes, radio stations, and the recurring ability of musicians to transform broken equipment into a major artistic breakthrough. We also discovered that the ghosts of several musicians remain deeply dissatisfied with their royalty statements. If you're enjoying the series, please like the episode and subscribe to the podcast. That helps new listeners find the show, and it ensures that you won't miss the next chapter in the story. Today, we're covering the years from 1954 to 1957. This is the breakthrough era: Bill Haley and His Comets, Elvis Presley, Chuck Berry, Little Richard, Fats Domino, Bo Diddley, Carl Perkins, Sun Records, Rockabilly, television appearances, screaming teenagers, nervous parents, and a truly historic quantity of hair product. To guide us through the chaos, I'm joined once again by Ms. Harris, historian, record collector, curator of the Backbeat Basement Archive, and the only person I know who has successfully completed an archaeological excavation of a jukebox.
Hello, Robert. It was a delicate operation. We recovered 3 coins, a button from a bowling shirt, and enough dust to establish an independent civilization.
Any ghosts?
One, but he only wanted to request a song.
What did he request?
Blue suede shoes.
Then he's arrived at exactly the right episode. Last time, we ended in the early 1950s with the fuse already burning. Rhythm and blues records had passionate audiences. Country performers were adapting boogie rhythms. Electric guitars were getting louder. Independent labels were moving quickly. Radio was carrying music across boundaries. So what changes in 1954?
The ingredients were already present, but something accelerates. Between 1954 and 1957, rock and roll becomes visible to a much larger audience. It moves into the pop charts, onto television screens, into movie theaters, and directly into the anxiety dreams of adults across the United States.
Which sounds dramatic.
It was dramatic. But we need to be careful with the word suddenly. To many Black listeners, the music did not appear from nowhere. Artists such as Fats Domino were already making successful records. Rhythm and blues had thriving audiences. What changed was that a much broader mainstream market began to notice, purchase, imitate, promote, and panic about the sound.
So the explosion looks different depending on where you're standing.
Exactly. A teenager encountering rock and roll through a movie in 1955 might experience it as a shocking new discovery. A musician working in rhythm and blues might hear a style connected to years of musical development.
And the music industry hears cash registers.
The industry has remarkably sensitive ears in that frequency range.
This is also where the idea of the teenager becomes crucial, isn't it?
Yes. After the Second World War, teenagers became increasingly important as a consumer group. Many had some spending money. They bought records, listened to radio, went to dances, watched television, and developed tastes that were not simply inherited from their parents.
Teenagers selecting their own music. A terrifying collapse of civilization.
That was genuinely how some adults talked about it. Rock and roll was loud, rhythmic, youthful, connected to Black musical traditions, and associated with dancing. It challenged social boundaries. It also gave young people something that felt like their own.
And once young people discover a thing that belongs to them, adults immediately become experts on why it is dangerous.
That is one of the fundamental laws of cultural history.
Let's begin with a musician who can sometimes feel slightly out of place in the standard rock and roll mythology: Bill Haley.
Yes, Bill Haley did not look like the dangerous young rebel people later imagined when they thought of rock stars. He had a background in country and western swing, and he was already an experienced performer when the breakthrough came.
He also had a distinctive curl of hair over his forehead.
A kiss curl.
Thank you. I wanted to call it a forehead comma.
It did provide useful punctuation.
Bill Haley and His Comets recorded Rock Around the Clock in 1954. Was it immediately a huge hit?
Not immediately. It gained much greater attention after it was used in the opening credits of the 1955 film Blackboard Jungle. The film dealt with troubled students and juvenile delinquency, and the song's pounding energy created an unforgettable opening.
So the song enters the culture attached to an image of young people alarming their elders.
Exactly. That association mattered. Rock Around the Clock became a massive success. It helped make rock and roll visible as a mainstream phenomenon.
The title itself sounds like a promise and a threat. We will rock around the clock. There will be no bedtime. The clock has lost authority.
No adult supervision. No respect for municipal quiet hours.
What should listeners notice in the recording?
The rhythm is direct and insistent. The band sounds polished, but the record still feels exciting. There's a strong backbeat, an energetic vocal, and a guitar solo that helps point toward the central role the electric guitar will play in rock music.
It also feels built for participation. You do not sit quietly and admire it from a respectful distance.
Correct. The song is social. It invites dancing. Its energy is immediate, and that made it extremely effective in a movie theater full of young people.
There were reports of audiences responding enthusiastically, sometimes destructively, to rock and roll movies and concerts.
Yes, we should avoid turning every story into a cartoon of teenagers smashing seats. But the excitement was real. Rock and roll became connected in the public imagination with juvenile rebellion, dancing, noise, and disorder.
A powerful marketing strategy, even when the people complaining about it didn't mean it as advertising.
Absolutely. Telling teenagers that a record may be dangerous is rarely an effective way to prevent them from hearing it.
If Rock Around the Clock helped make rock and roll a national event, another important story was unfolding in Memphis.
At Sun Records.
Let's set the scene. What kind of place was Sun?
Sun Records was founded by Sam Phillips, who had recorded important blues artists before working with performers who would become associated with rockabilly and rock and roll. His studio in Memphis became a meeting point for musicians and sounds. It was small, independent, and deeply connected to the region.
Memphis itself matters.
Very much. Memphis was a crossroads city with rich musical traditions. Blues, gospel, country, and rhythm and blues were all part of the environment. A young musician could hear music in churches, clubs, on radio stations, and in record shops.
And in 1954, Elvis Presley enters the story.
Yes, Elvis was a young singer from Memphis. During a session with guitarist Scotty Moore and bassist Bill Black, the musicians worked through different songs. At one point, Elvis began singing Arthur Crudup's blues song, That's All Right. The performance had a loose, lively energy.
And Sam Phillips recognized something.
He did. They recorded it and the track was played on local radio. The response was immediate enough to create excitement around Elvis.
When you listen to That's All Right, it sounds remarkably spare.
That's part of its power. Elvis sings, Scotty Moore plays electric guitar, Bill Black plays bass. There are no drums on the recording, yet the performance has momentum. It feels informal, but it is not careless. The musicians create space and rhythm together.
There's a buoyancy to it. It doesn't sound like a museum exhibit labeled Historic Turning Point. It sounds like three people having a very good night.
Exactly. And that is one reason the recording matters. It brings together influences in a way that feels natural. Elvis had heard blues, country, gospel, and pop music. The performance doesn't sit neatly in one category.
Which brings us to the word rockabilly.
Rockabilly is commonly associated with the fusion of country music, sometimes called hillbilly music in the industry's terminology of the period, with rhythm and blues influences. The style often features energetic vocals, guitar, bass, a strong rhythmic pulse, and a sense of nervous momentum.
Nervous momentum is perfect. A rockabilly record often sounds like a train that has become slightly too enthusiastic about being a train.
That is surprisingly useful.
Elvis recorded several important Sun singles before moving to RCA Records. But the story becomes controversial when people call him the inventor of rock and roll.
Elvis did not invent rock and roll. The music had deep roots in Black musical traditions, and artists such as Fats Domino, Big Mama Thornton, Sister Rosetta Tharpe, Chuck Berry, Little Richard, Bo Diddley, and many others are essential to the story. Elvis became an enormously influential performer and the first rock and roll superstar, but he was not the sole creator of the music.
So we can acknowledge his talent without pretending that the story started when he walked into a studio.
Exactly. Elvis had charisma, a strong voice, an instinctive feel for different styles, and a striking stage presence. His success also reveals how race shaped the music industry. A white performer could bring sounds influenced by Black music to audiences that the segregated marketplace did not always allow Black artists to reach equally.
The story is neither Elvis invented everything, nor Elvis contributed nothing.
Right. History gets more useful when we resist slogans.
Even though slogans fit nicely on novelty coffee mugs.
Most errors in music history are available on a novelty coffee mug.
Let's talk about Elvis on stage, because the sound was only part of the phenomenon.
Elvis moved when he performed. That seems like an almost comically mild statement now, but his physical style attracted enormous attention. Young audiences were excited. Many adults were horrified.
What exactly were people frightened of?
Some complaints focused on sexuality and suggestive movement, but there were also anxieties about youth independence, changing behavior, and racial boundaries. Rock and roll drew from Black music and encouraged integrated audiences at a time when segregation remained deeply embedded in American society.
So when adults objected to a teenager dancing to a record, the anxiety could be larger than the dance itself.
Much larger. Moral panic often compresses several social fears into one convenient target. A singer's hips become a symbol of everything that seems to be changing too quickly.
Elvis appeared on national television, but some broadcasters tried to manage the danger.
One famous example came during a 1957 appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show, when the cameras framed Elvis largely from the waist up.
An important victory for national security.
The lower half of Elvis Presley had been contained.
Did it work?
Not remotely. Attempts to make the music less exciting often made it seem even more exciting. Restriction added to the mythology.
The camera could crop the image, but it couldn't crop the idea.
Exactly.
Now we come to Chuck Berry, and this feels like a major shift. Not because rhythm suddenly appears, but because the songs become such precise stories about youth culture.
Yes, Chuck Berry was one of rock and roll's defining songwriters and guitarists. His records brought together blues language, country influence, rhythm and blues energy, sharp storytelling, and memorable electric guitar introductions.
His first major hit was Maybelline in 1955.
Correct. Maybelline adapts the feel of an older country fiddle tune, but Berry's recording turns it into something fast, electric, and urgent. The lyrics involve cars, jealousy, pursuit, and motion.
Once again, the car becomes important.
Cars mattered enormously in the mythology of rock and roll. They represented mobility, independence, speed, privacy, romance, and escape. A teenager with access to a car had a little moving territory beyond adult supervision.
And a Chuck Berry song could turn that territory into a 3-minute movie.
Exactly. Berry wrote vividly about school, dancing, romance, music, cars, and teenage life. His lyrics were clever without sounding stiff. He understood how to create scenes.
He also wrote songs that later bands returned to constantly.
Roll Over Beethoven, School Day, rock and roll music, Johnny Be Good. His guitar language became foundational. When later rock bands learned to play, Chuck Berry riffs were part of the vocabulary.
The guitar openings feel like announcements. The song doesn't gently enter the room. It kicks open the door, gives you a business card, and starts dancing.
That is accurate. Barry's playing gave the electric guitar a central storytelling role. It was rhythmic, melodic, and instantly recognizable.
There is also an important crossover element in his music.
Yes, Barry understood that young listeners from different backgrounds could recognize themselves in songs about school, cars, romance, and music. But we should not mistake broad appeal for a world without racism. He navigated a segregated society and a music industry shaped by unequal power.
Which makes his achievement even more impressive.
Very much so. His records help define not only the sound of rock and roll, but its imagination.
If Bill Haley tells us the party is happening, Chuck Berry gives us directions, a car, a school schedule, and a mild disagreement with Beethoven.
Beethoven had a difficult decade.
And then, Little Richard.
Little Richard.
I'm sensing that we should increase the structural reinforcement in the studio.
It would be wise. Little Richard's music does not politely request your attention.
His breakthrough recording was Tutti Frutti, recorded in 1955.
Yes, Little Richard had an explosive voice, a pounding piano style, extraordinary charisma, and a performance energy that seemed to leap out of the speakers. Tutti Frutti is one of the defining records of early rock and roll.
The opening vocal alone feels like someone launching a firework indoors.
Exactly. And the lyrics famously required revision before the record could be released. Little Richard's original club lyrics were far more suggestive. The recorded version became suitable enough for commercial distribution, but the energy remained completely untamed.
There are moments in music history when a record doesn't merely become popular. It changes the expected temperature of the room.
That's beautifully put. Little Richard brought gospel intensity into secular performance. His voice could shout, soar, and push the rhythm forward. His piano playing added relentless drive. His visual style also mattered. The hair, the clothes, the confidence, the theatricality.
This is where our historically significant hair discussion becomes unavoidable.
The pompadour has entered the building.
And refused to remove its hat.
Little Richard challenged expectations in several ways. He was flamboyant, unpredictable, and impossible to ignore. He embodied some of the things rock and roll would continue to represent: intensity, self-invention, rebellion, performance, and the possibility of becoming larger than everyday life for 2.5 minutes.
His songs also moved quickly into the cover recording system.
Yes, in the 1950s, white performers sometimes recorded cleaner, more restrained versions of songs first recorded by black artists. Pat Boone's version of Tutti Frutti is a famous example.
Listening to the two performances next to each other is quite an experience.
One is a kitchen fire. The other is a carefully supervised candle.
That is devastatingly accurate.
Covers could help songs reach audiences, but they also reveal the unequal conditions of the marketplace. Black artists created performances filled with energy and invention, while more acceptable white versions were sometimes promoted to mainstream audiences.
Yet the original records endured.
Because you cannot fully domesticate that energy. Little Richard sounds like Little Richard. The force is unmistakable.
We should pause here and talk about Fats Domino, because his career reminds us again that the rock and roll explosion had a prehistory.
Absolutely. Fats Domino was from New Orleans, a city with an extraordinary musical culture. His first major recording, The Fat Man, was released in 1949. By the mid-1950s, he had already built a substantial audience.
Which means that, depending on where you were listening, Fats Domino was not a new arrival.
Correct. His piano style, relaxed vocals, rhythmic feel, and New Orleans sound were central to early rock and roll. Songs such as Ain't That a Shame and Blueberry Hill reached wide audiences.
Fats Domino sometimes gets less attention in simplified versions of the story, perhaps because his performance style wasn't as visibly confrontational.
That's an important point. He did not need to perform rebellion in the same way as some other artists. His music was warm, rhythmic, confident, and enormously influential. He sold a remarkable number of records.
His playing sounds effortless.
Which usually means a great deal of craft is hiding inside the apparent ease. Fats Domino helped establish that rock and roll could be joyful, danceable, melodic, and commercially powerful.
The revolution could smile.
Exactly. Not every important record arrives wearing a leather jacket and kicking a chair over.
Some arrive at the piano with better manners. Another artist who expands the rhythmic vocabulary is Bo Diddley.
Bo Diddley is essential. His 1955 recording, Bo Diddley, introduced many listeners to a distinctive rhythmic pattern that became closely associated with him, the Bo Diddley beat.
Can we describe it without turning the podcast into a percussion examination?
We can try. It is a syncopated rhythm connected to Afro-diasporic musical traditions. You can hear variations of the pattern in different musical contexts, but Bo Diddley made it a signature element of rock and roll.
So the man, the song, and the beat all share a name.
Efficient branding.
Very modern.
Bo Diddley's records are raw, rhythmic, and hypnotic. He also had a strong visual identity, including his rectangular guitar. His influence reaches far beyond his own hits. Later rock musicians borrowed the beat repeatedly.
Rock history is full of artists who become famous and artists who quietly install the load-bearing walls.
Bo Diddley did both, but the scale of his influence can still be underestimated. Once you learn to recognize that beat, you start hearing it everywhere.
Which is either an educational breakthrough or the beginning of a very specific haunting.
The beat knows where you live.
Ms. Harris, we discussed the boundaries of supernatural commentary.
The beat did not sign the agreement.
Let's return to Sun Records and Rockabilly. Carl Perkins is central here.
Yes, Carl Perkins was a singer, songwriter, and guitarist from Tennessee. He brought together country, blues, and rhythmic drive in a way that became strongly associated with rockabilly.
He wrote and recorded Blue Suede Shoes in 1955.
Correct. The song became a national hit in 1956. It is a wonderful example of how a simple idea can become iconic. The singer is willing to tolerate almost any personal inconvenience, but stepping on the shoes crosses a sacred boundary.
You can knock him down, step in his face, and slander his name all over the place. But footwear remains protected under international law.
Exactly.
And the song isn't just about shoes.
No, it is about style, self-respect, youth culture, and personal identity. Clothing becomes part of rock and roll. The look matters, the shoes matter, the hair matters. A young listener can participate in the culture through fashion as well as music.
Elvis later recorded a famous version.
Yes, but Carl Perkins wrote the song and recorded the original hit. Perkins's career was affected by a serious car accident at a crucial moment, just as the record was becoming successful.
Another reminder that cultural history can turn on unpredictable events.
Absolutely. Talent matters, timing matters, promotion matters, luck matters, transportation safety matters more than historians would like.
Sun Records also recorded Johnny Cash and Jerry Lee Lewis.
Yes, Johnny Cash developed a distinctive style that crossed genre boundaries, and Jerry Lee Lewis brought ferocious piano energy to rock and roll. We'll spend more time with Jerry Lee Lewis in the next episode because 1957 gives us a whole lot of shaking going on and great balls of fire.
Which are subtle, understated recordings.
Almost meditative.
We've been joking about adult anxiety, but let's deal with it directly. Why did rock and roll frighten people so much?
There wasn't one reason. Some adults objected to the volume, dancing, sexuality, and youth independence. Some feared juvenile delinquency. Some objected to the music's connection to Black culture and the possibility of integrated audiences. Some worried that established social hierarchies were weakening.
So a complaint about a record might contain several kinds of discomfort at once.
Exactly. Rock and roll developed in a segregated society. Its roots in Black musical traditions mattered deeply, and its circulation across racial boundaries could be controversial. Concerts sometimes attracted racially mixed audiences. Young white listeners bought records by Black performers. That exchange did not end racism, but it challenged cultural separation.
The music could cross lines more quickly than society was willing to admit.
Yes, but we also need to acknowledge the inequality within that exchange. Black artists frequently faced exploitation, unequal promotion, segregated venues, unfair contracts, and less access to mainstream media. White artists often received greater visibility and commercial opportunity.
Which is why a responsible history of rock and roll has to keep returning to the question of who received credit.
And who received money?
The ghosts are listening.
The ghosts have retained legal counsel.
Good for them.
It is possible to enjoy the excitement of the period while still examining the unfairness. In fact, the story becomes more meaningful when we do both.
And the artists weren't simply symbols in a debate. They were musicians trying to make records, reach audiences, and build careers.
Exactly. A song can be joyful and historically complicated at the same time.
As promised, it's time for 5 records for the road. These aren't the only important songs from the period, and they aren't a ranking. They are 5 doors into the breakthrough years from 1954 to 1957. Links to all 5 songs are available in the episode description, so you can listen after the show and hear the details for yourself.
And turn the volume up responsibly.
Responsibly?
Responsibly adjacent.
That sounds historically appropriate. First, Bill Haley and His Comets, Rock Around the Clock, recorded in 1954.
Listen to the backbeat, the vocal energy, and the guitar solo. Think about how the song would have felt blasting through a movie theater at the beginning of Blackboard Jungle. It helped turn rock and roll into a mainstream event.
Second, Elvis Presley, That's All Right, recorded at Sun in 1954.
Listen to the space in the recording. Elvis Presley, Scotty Moore, and Bill Black create momentum without drums. It sounds spontaneous, light on its feet, and difficult to place inside a single category.
Third, Chuck Berry, Maybelline, from 1955.
Listen for the speed, the guitar, the country influence transformed by rhythm and blues energy, and the lyrics about cars and romantic trouble. Berry gives you a chase scene in less than 3 minutes.
Fourth, Little Richard, Tutti Frutti, from 1955.
Listen to the opening vocal, then recover. Then listen to the pounding piano and the intensity of the performance. The record does not ask whether you're ready. It assumes that readiness is your private problem.
Fifth, Carl Perkins, Blue Suede Shoes, recorded in 1955.
Listen to the guitar, the rockabilly rhythm, and the attitude. The song is playful, but the warning is real. Respect the shoes.
5 songs, 5 distinct personalities, and 5 ways to hear the music breaking into the mainstream.
And we could easily build another list. Fats Domino's Ain't That a Shame. Bo Diddley's Bo Diddley. Little Richard's Long Tall Sally. Chuck Berry's Roll Over Beethoven. Elvis Presley's Mystery Train. The period is overflowing with essential records.
Which means the episode description is about to become a small public library.
As it should.
Let's stand at the end of 1957. How different does the world look compared with 1954?
Rock and roll is now impossible to dismiss as a passing regional curiosity. It has major stars, hit records, national television appearances, movie connections, teenage audiences, and a recognizable visual style. Electric guitar is increasingly central. The backbeat is everywhere. The music industry understands that young listeners are a powerful market.
And adults have developed a sophisticated response.
They have complained extensively.
Several defining artists are now in motion. Chuck Berry, Little Richard, Fats Domino, Bo Diddley, Elvis Presley, Carl Perkins, Jerry Lee Lewis, Buddy Holly, the Everly Brothers, and many more.
Yes, but the story is not moving in a straight line. Careers will change, scandals will erupt, tragedies will happen. Some artists will step away from rock and roll. The music industry will try to package the sound more neatly. New styles will emerge.
So the explosion creates a problem. Once rock and roll becomes commercially successful, everyone tries to decide what to do with it.
Exactly. Do you tame it, copy it, sell it, ban it, put it on television, market it to teenagers, replace the dangerous parts with a safer imitation?
Or place it under close supervision from the waist down?
An unsuccessful strategy, as previously established.
The music has entered the mainstream, but it hasn't settled down.
It was never especially interested in settling down.
Next time, we'll move from 1957 to 1960. The first wave of rock and roll expands, but it also begins to fracture.
We'll talk about Buddy Holly, whose songwriting and recording methods point toward the future. We'll talk about the Everly Brothers and vocal harmony. We'll discuss Jerry Lee Lewis, whose piano playing was matched only by his ability to create headlines.
That sounds ominous.
It should.
We'll also talk about Ritchie Valens' doo-wop, teen idols, the payola scandal, and the series of events that made the end of the decade feel like the end of rock and roll's first chapter.
The late 1950s are fascinating because the music becomes more diverse at exactly the moment some people start trying to make it safer.
And I assume the ghosts have opinions.
The Ghosts have started a newsletter.
Is it subscription-based?
Free tier, premium tier, and an extremely expensive plan that includes legal advice from beyond the grave.
Surprisingly modern. Ms. Harris, before we go, what is the one idea you want listeners to carry away from this episode?
Rock and roll did not break through because of one person or one record. Between 1954 and 1957, many artists pushed the music forward in different ways. Bill Haley helped bring it into the mainstream. Elvis Presley became its first superstar. Chuck Berry shaped its guitar language and teenage imagination. Little Richard raised the emotional temperature. Fats Domino brought New Orleans rhythm and melody. Bo Diddley gave it an unforgettable beat. Carl Perkins helped define rockabilly style.
A cast of characters rather than a solitary inventor.
Exactly. And behind those famous names are musicians, songwriters, producers, independent labels, radio stations, record shops, jukeboxes, local scenes, audiences, and traditions reaching back decades.
Thank you, Ms. Harris.
Thank you, Robert, and thank you for respecting the blue suede shoes.
I have spent the entire episode standing several feet away from them.
Sensible.
And thank you for listening to Amplified History. Links to the 5 featured songs are waiting for you in the episode description. Give them a listen, compare the styles, and notice how many different roads lead into rock and roll. If you enjoyed the episode, please like it, subscribe to the podcast, and share it with someone who has strong opinions about guitar solos, pompadours, or the constitutional rights of blue suede footwear.
Especially the footwear.
Next time, rebels, ballads, backbeats, Buddy Holly, Jerry Lee Lewis, doo-wop, tragedy, and the uneasy domestication of rock. Until then, keep the volume just slightly unreasonable.